StrayAllDay.com.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques all underneath the umbrella of one unified philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is less information, more stories. Before we get into this, I remind you all of two things. First of all, my daily motivation and Monday motivation messages, guaranteed to have you focused, sharp, and on point to start your day or your week, respectively. All you got to do to receive these is be part of my texting community. Here's the number to text: 305-384-6894. Once you send a text there, you'll be in our database. And once we start sending the messages out again, you'll be hearing from our bot. We'll let you know the messages are coming, and then you'll be hearing directly from me with those messages that do exactly what I just said. Guaranteed to have you focused, sharp, and on point to start your day. So text me at my number, 305-384-6894. And once we start sending those out again, we'll already have your information. You won't have to do anything. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. This is the place where I work with top 2% performance. All right, this is not for everybody. Looking for people who are serious about being at the top of your game. You are serious about making the necessary fundamental changes to your thought processes, to your strategies, to your systems, and make sure you're being held fully accountable for your highest level of performance done consistently to produce results. If that sounds like your language, I know it's not everybody's language, but if it sounds like your language, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. That link is below in the description to this video. With that out the way, folks, let's get into the topic here today, which again is less information and more stories. Now, most people, in my experience, when they feel like they are stuck and not getting the outcomes they want, they tend to believe that they just need some information. There's some information, some missing information that is in between where they currently are and where they would like to be. And sometimes this is the case, but often is not the case. Let me say it again, just in case you didn't catch it. Most of the time when people are not getting the outcome they want, they're stuck in some way, they believe that a lack of information is the only thing in between where they are and where they would like to be. If someone would just give them all the information, they reason, and again, I have people who will say these things directly to me. If someone would just give them all the information that they're missing, then, or teach them the information, then it would solve all of their problems, allegedly. Now, I have found, and I know for sure that this is most of the time, as I said, not the case. That is not the real problem. Now, maybe this person who is saying this does lack information. There is some information that they don't have. However, it is not the information itself that is actually that's not the bottleneck to their issue. Maybe information is part of it, but information is not all of it. You get what I'm saying here? So it means if you are someone trying to get your point across to another person, giving them more information, for example, is not going to help them nearly as much as you think it will. If you're a person trying to solve a problem in your life or your business, getting more information is not going to solve your issues nearly as much as you think it will. I would suggest, as is the theme of today's masterclass, you get better at stories, whether that is telling stories to others to get your point across, or changing the story in your own mind to open you up to different ways of looking at a situation through which maybe information will help, but the change in perspective, the shift in the perspective will make a much bigger difference than the shift in or an additional, an add-on, let's say, of information. You understand what I'm saying here? Now, again, I'm just in the introduction. So if you like the introduction, wait till you hear the points. And I'm going to tell you how you can still get your information in, but do it in a different way. All right, everybody open to that, what I just proposed? Good. Point number one. Topic once again today is less information, more stories. Point number one. Information gets easily forgotten and is being quickly democratized. Information is easily forgotten and it is being quickly democratized. Let me prove to you how what I just said is true. Most of the listeners to the show who are, if you're over the age of 21, if you're listening to this and you are over the age of 21, I'm going to assume that you graduated from high school. Most of my listeners have graduated from at least high school if you're over 21. Some of you might be in high school, but if you're over 21, you graduated. Now, despite the fact that you graduated from high school, here's a question I'm going to pose to you. I'm going to give the assumption here. It's not really a question. Most of you cannot recall most of the information you consumed in high school, even though you graduated. Can we agree? All right, tell me something that you learned in the 10th grade or the 11th grade or the ninth grade or the 12th grade. Most of you can't recall much, even though you have a diploma that says you passed all the necessary classes and you passed all the tests and you proved yourself sufficient in knowledge of what was being taught at school, even though here you are 35, 48, 52, 27, and you cannot remember most of what you learned. This is my point. Information is easily forgotten. I'm not saying that you cheated to graduate from high school. I'm not saying that you didn't get the knowledge. What I'm saying is you can't remember it even though you graduated. Information is easily forgotten. Now, this is what happens. This is what we do with information. We thirst for it when we don't have it, and then when we get it, we quickly forget it. This is what happens with information. It is easily forgotten. Now, let me ask you another question. And this one, I'm actually going to ask a question. Another one I didn't ask a question. I just made an assumption. Here's the question. Can you tell me some stories of something that happened in 10th grade? Can you tell me a story of something that happened in 9th grade or 11th grade or 12th grade? Can you tell me a story about something that happened in high school? Of course you can. You can tell me the story with shocking clarity, with detail, and you can almost put yourself there as if it was happening right now, if I really got you to get into the story. Every one of you listening to this who graduated high school can do this for at least one story, one experience of something that happened in high school. Yet, almost none of you can give me the details of some information you got from high school. And this illustrates my point perfectly, that you are much more likely to remember a story than you are to remember information. Now, think about what this means. You're a human, and I'm referring to thousands of people who are listening to me right now. So I'm not just talking to you individual, I'm talking to you and a bunch of other yous who are also listening to what I'm saying right now. And it applies to all of you, which means what? This applies to all the other humans on the planet who are not currently listening to the show right now. And it means if you want to get something across to a person and hope they retain it, you're better off giving them a story than you are giving them information. Do you understand what I'm saying here? You can tell me a story of what happened in high school with clarity and detail. You can't tell me any of the information. And now, why is all of this true? This is an important question. It's true because human beings are wired for narrative and story. We are wired for this. We are wired for narrative and story. The challenge with information, another challenge with information, is that it's becoming highly democratized. We are not wired for information, first of all. Computers and computer chips are wired for information. Okay, so you want something that's wired for information, go buy a laptop. Or your laptop is wired for information. Your phone is wired for information. You as a person are not wired for information. You are wired for narrative. Notice that stories and history books get passed down how? Through stories. Well, I just gave it away in my statement. History gets passed down through story. All right. Religion gets passed down through story. Any of you who is a religious person and you read your religious texts on a somewhat consistent basis, at least, notice that everything in the book is a story. It's not information, it's a story. That's how it gets passed down, is a story. And this speaks also to the power of story. That religions, every religion out there, whichever one, Jewish, Christian, Buddhist, Muslim, Catholic, all the other ones that I'm not mentioning, they're all based in story, and people base their lives, those who are devout followers of certain religions, they base their entire lives around doing what the religion tells them to do. And what the religion tells them to do is all based in a story that was told to you. Isn't that true? Yes, it's true. Of course it's true. Because human beings are wired for story. So if you want to get something across to people and get them to believe it, you better learn how to tell a story. Take that information, turn it into a story. It's much easier digested and much easier retained and much easier followed through on if you want them to do anything with it. And here's the other thing where I talked about, say information is being democratized. What does that mean? Democratized means more and more people have access to not only consuming it, but also creating it. This is the challenge with information. More and more people are sharing information because now anybody can do what I'm doing right now. Anybody could start an audio show or a YouTube channel or a social media profile and start publishing anything you want about anything you want at any time. And you could theoretically potentially reach billions of people with your message right from your phone without doing anything, but no prior qualifications, skill set, training, etc. You need nothing. You can just put your stuff out there. More and more people are doing this, and they're sharing what, maybe we'll loosely call it information. It's not always information, but they can just put their message out there, whatever it is. And nowadays, there is software that can create information without a human giving any input. They can just create information on its own by simply scraping the internet for things that have already been shared. It just basically takes an amalgamation of everything that me and everyone else out there, including you, has ever shared, It puts it all into a database because, again, computers and computer chips are wired to process information, whereas we're wired for story. And it can make new information, quote unquote, new information based on just putting together all the information we have and popping out something new. It's kind of like creating a gumbo by just throwing a whole bunch of different foods into a pot, cooking it up, and saying, all right, this is Aunt Sally's new gumbo. Or you just made up something by putting everything else together. This is what's happening right now today. People are doing this right now as we speak. I'm letting this one sink in. In other words, folks, information is useful. All right, don't get me wrong. Information is useful. All right, I've written many books that are, we can call them information based. I put narrative in everything I write, but they're information based. I write a good amount of information based material. I'm giving you a good amount of information right now. I'm not really telling you stories. I'm just giving you things to logically consider. Information is useful, but is less and less unique to any individual person. You are going to need more than that. And most information that most of us consume, as I already told you, gets forgotten anyway. All right, so I wouldn't build my future around information, because how are you going to build your future around something that people are going to forget? It doesn't make any sense. You rather build it around your unique identity, even if you're sharing information. So I'm giving you information right now, but I talked about this unique ability, rather, not identity, unique ability. I talked about this in episode number 2820, identifying and embracing your unique ability. So if you haven't heard that, go check it. I will not build my future on information alone. Point number 2. Oh yeah, by the way, workonyourgamepodcast.com. That's where you can access the other shows here if you can't find them in the feed. In the feed, they only give you maybe the last 500. And for now, please listen, for now, you can go to workonyourgamepodcast.com and access those. But that may change. So I would suggest when I drop a hint of an episode you can listen to from the past, you go listen to it now before things change. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is less information, more stories. Point number 2. Stories get remembered and are more proprietary. Proprietary just means it is owned by someone. Human beings are wired to consume, tell, share, and follow stories. I just gave you some examples of that in the first point. You want to get a point across to a human being, you are much more likely to have that point absorbed and understood if it is shared through a story than if it is shared through just plain information. There is a percentage of people out there, some of whom are listening to me right now, who I could just give you a bunch of information and you can process it and you will absorb it, you will understand it, and you will do something with it. Most of you, however, would do much better processing, absorbing, and utilizing information if it is packaged as a story. If I just give you the information, you're probably not going to get it. I mean, you'll get it, but you're not going to remember it, you're not going to retain it, and you probably will not apply it if I just give you information. If all you need was information, folks, again, go down to the library. There's no competition to get access to information. People may process and understand information, but they usually don't remember it. Again, I already gave you this example. Tell me something you learned in 11th grade. You went to 11th grade, right? You passed, right? You graduated, right? Okay. What'd you learn? Tell me something. You went there for a whole year. You can't remember anything? Exactly. We don't remember information. Tell me a story of something that happened in 11th grade. You can do that. Okay. That's the difference. People may process and understand information. They usually do not retain it. They will not apply it. But if you tell someone a story, if it's a good story, they will remember the story. The other benefit of telling stories, folks, is that your stories are more proprietary than your information, meaning you can own your story. You don't really own information. If I give you some information about, I don't know, if I learned something about how high rises get built, if I just went and sat around with a bunch of architects who talk about building buildings all day, and I just, eavesdropped on the conversation and took some notes, I could come here and do a whole episode about how building architecture happens. It's information based. But I don't own that information, because anybody who's in the architectural space who knows anything about building buildings, they would listen to me talk and say, yeah, of course, everything he said is true. But I knew that before I heard Dre say it. So I don't own that information. They know it. The other guy knows it. These other people here know it. Everybody knows it. So I don't really own that information. Now, if I tell you a story about how I was part of building some new monstrosity in downtown Miami, and I tell you the story of my experience in doing it, I own that story because it happened to me. I experienced that story. I'm not the only one who knows how to build a building, but I am the only one who experienced my process of building the building, my story of how it went. See, when you tell people your story, now you own it. Now it becomes proprietary. This is one of the reasons why many times when I'm telling you things, I don't do it in every episode here, but I do it often. When I'm telling you things, I give you stories around what I'm telling you to help you understand why I'm saying it. I'm telling you what, because that also gives you the connection of why do I care? Why am I talking about this? Well, why do I care about this one right here? The reason I care about this right here is because I'm a person who shares a good amount of what could be classified as information, but I'm able to package that information within stories. When I tell you about the third day, I give you a story. The story doesn't have to be something that personally happened in your own life. It doesn't have to be somebody else's story. It can be anecdotal. You can give an anecdote that explains the story. So when I explain to you the third day, I tell you, the first day you go to the gym, you're really excited to go to the gym. You got a new workout, personal trainer, you got new workout gear, and a trainer kicks your butt. You drag yourself home, you say, I'm doing this. The second day, you're a little bit less excited because you've got the soreness from the day one, but you still want to go to the gym because you signed up for it. Trainer kicks your butt a little bit more, you drag yourself home, you say, I'm doing this. On the third day, already you feel like you made a mistake. The third day, your body's all sore. You don't want to talk to the trainer. You don't really feel like working out. You don't want to say hi to the person at the front desk. You might want to just grab your phone and text your trainer while you're still in bed and say, just charge me for the session because I'm not coming. On the third day already, you realize that the thing you signed up for is not one big party. It's not all fun and games. You got to do some actual work. Now, what did I just tell you there? Everybody understands the feeling of what I'm explaining, even if you don't go to the gym. You understand what the third day is about just from that 30-second, was that 30 seconds, 45-second anecdote that I gave you explaining what the third day is about. It's all about understanding that when you sign up for a thing that is going to produce a substantial result with real substance, there's going to be some hard work involved, even though it may not feel like hard work when you first start. Eventually, it will feel like hard work, and you have to make a decision as to whether you're going to keep showing up or you're not. That's what the third day is. So I gave you an anecdotal example to package the information. You understand? So when you have this ability, now you can start putting in real examples. I can give you some real life examples from my real life and real examples of other people's lives that match the anecdote that I just gave you for the third day. So when you're telling a story, ladies and gentlemen, especially a personal story, like a personal thought, a personal experience, a personal perspective, these become proprietary because only you experienced it. Now, somebody could borrow your story and use it, but it's still yours because it's your story. All right, so I've used other people's stories in some of my material. I tell you other people's stories all the time right here on the show. I'll mention Michael Jordan. I'll mention Donald Trump. I'll mention Barack Obama. I'll mention stories of people, but whether it's my story or somebody else's story, the story makes it easier to follow because human beings, again, let me say it again, we are wired to follow stories. When you start telling people a story, they will listen to you. If you just give people information, you are boring your audience, depending on how you do it. Let me put that in there. That matters as well. Depending on how you do it. If you just give people information, it can be very boring. I remember years ago, here's a story right here. I do this naturally to the point that I don't even think about it. But years ago, I was giving a keynote speech at a conference. It was a 2-day conference, and the conference was a marketing-based business entrepreneur conference. And in the 2 days, there were 2 keynote speakers. I was a keynote on day 1, and there was this woman who was a keynote on day 2. I spoke on day 1, and I gave a keynote called Work on Your Game. And any of you's ever heard my Work on Your Game keynote? I don't know if any of you's ever heard it. You had to actually hear me in a speech to give it. But if you listen to this show on a regular basis, you basically heard every piece that goes in that keynote. You've heard it at some point on this show because it's just pieces that I just move around. I just move the pieces around like a puzzle whenever I'm giving a keynote. So everything that's in the Work on Your Game keynote, all of you have heard me say it at some point if you listen to the show on a regular basis. So anyway, I give the keynote on like Tuesday, whatever. I stayed at the place because I wanted to hear the Wednesday keynote speaker. There was a woman. I wanted to hear what she had to say on Wednesday. I didn't want to hear it because she was a woman. I just wanted to hear another speaker just to see what she was doing because I was relatively new to the speaking industry at that point. And this is probably about 2017, 18, something like that. And I just wanted to see what other keynote speakers did in person because, hey, maybe she's better than me. Maybe I can learn something. So I sat and listened to her keynote, and her speech was 100% information. All of it was information. Like, she didn't tell a single story in the entire speech. She spoke for about the same amount of time that I did, about 40, 45 minutes. And her whole speech was just information, 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 information. And to me, it was boring. Now, I don't know what everybody else in the audience was thinking, and nobody's probably going to tell me or tell her directly to her face. To me, it was very boring. My speech, I believe, was much more riveting. Now, of course, I'm talking about myself, so maybe I got it completely backwards. Maybe everybody thought I was boring and she was amazing. I don't think so, though. I don't think so. I think mine was much more riveting because I was telling a story. And another thing about telling stories, folks, is that you don't have to remember it. When you're telling a story and it's a true story, it's much easier to retain in your own head for you to give it as a presentation than it is when you got to remember a lot of information. If I had to give a 45-minute informational speech, it's just all information. That's very hard to do because I got to remember 45 minutes worth of information. That's difficult. Now, if I can get up there and just tell stories for 45 minutes, I don't even need notes. All I gotta do is just pick a few stories. All right, I'm gonna tell this story, this story. I'll just pick like 4 or 5 stories. I'll just tell the story. I'll just remember five. I gotta remember 5 things. If I gotta give information, I gotta remember like 50 things. But if I'm telling a story, I just gotta remember 5 things, and I just remember each one of the 5. Okay, so here's the first story, or here's the second one, here's the third one, here's the fourth one, here's the fifth one. When I give keynote speeches, this is literally what I do. All right, so any of you want a tip there, speakers, that's literally what I do. I just pick 5 points that I want to make, 5 pieces of information that I want to give. And what I do is I come up with a story that illustrates the point. So I tell the story first, then I tell you why I'm telling you the story, and then I tell you how you can use it. The story takes up most of the space. And that's how you keep an audience engaged, because people will listen all day if you tell good stories. Now, you give information, again, you're talking to like 2% of people who have the capacity to just listen to information. Everybody else is going to fall asleep, or they're going to tune you out, because, again, it's just the human brain. It's just the wiring of humans. So don't think this is going to change. Point number 3, today's topic, once again, less information, more stories. Number 3, there are very few truly ambitious people out there who are seeking information alone. There are very few people with this kind of ambition where they're just looking for information, even though everybody claims to be looking for information. Again, you ask most people who are stuck or they need help, do you need information? Everybody says yes. But most people are not looking for information. Most people are looking to be entertained in some way, and if they happen to be informed in the process, even better. But most people are not really, really just looking for information, because if they were, again, you can go to the library, you can access all the information you want for free. Most people are really not that. Okay, anyone, though, will listen to a story, and they'll remember a good one if you tell a good story. You ask most people if they're looking for information to be successful or to get to a higher level, everybody will say yes. And why do people say yes? So, because basically what I'm telling you here is that most people are lying. I'm telling you that most people say they want information, and if you ask most people, they say they want information. But I just told you that most people don't really want information. So why am I asserting that most people are lying when they say they're looking for information? I'll tell you. People tell you yes because they know that's what they're supposed to say. I mean, who's going to say I'm not looking for information to get better? No, I'm good. I'm just good being who I am. Most people won't say that because you sound like a fucking loser. At least if you're talking to someone who you consider to be ambitious themselves, they're going to be looking at you like you're crazy. Now, if you're talking to a bunch of average people, then maybe an average person might say, I'm all right just being who I am, because they know they're talking to people who are similar to them. They're preaching to a choir of average people. But if someone's talking to somebody like me and I say, do you want to get better? Do you want to improve? And do you feel like some information would help you do that? Most people would give some form of an affirmative yes. And again, this is because people usually tend to conform to doing what they think other people want them to do. It doesn't make them bad people. All right, it just makes you human. All right, human beings, usually we try to get along with each other. This is society. That's how society happens, because we aim to get along with people. We don't aim to be antagonistic towards everybody we come across, because if everybody did that, we would have chaos and we'd be barbarians out here. So I understand why people do this. Now, again, especially if you're talking to someone who's a source of information, you're going to tell them I need information because they might give you some. But if you look at what most people actually do, forget about what they say, look at what they do, you'll notice that most people are not really that ambitious about accomplishment. Most people are not that ambitious, even though, again, they say they are. I would say about 2% of people are really serious about high level achievement and would be satisfied with information alone. Only about 2% of people, you could just give them information, no story, no narrative, just information, and they're good. Again, these are people you find in a computer lab typing out code, and they don't need a story. They can just get information. These are people who hang in the library all day. Most of you ain't that. All right, I'm not that person either. All right, I am a sponge for information, but I'm still human and I can absorb it in a much better way depending on how it's coming in. All right, so everybody else, the other 98% of us, you need to tell stories to get and keep their attention. And again, you're still getting to the same outcome, everybody. Understand this. It's not watered down just because you put a story in it. You're still getting people the same outcome. You're just getting it to them a different way. It's just a different approach. That's all this is. Let's recap today's class. It's just less information, more stories. Most people, in my experience, feel like when they're stuck, they need information. Everybody says that. Most people don't need information. I'll tell you a better way of getting a point across to another person and of getting a point across to yourself. You want to get a point across to yourself, you need to change the story in your head first before you go get yourself more information. Point number 1. Information is easily forgotten, and it is also being democratized, meaning it's easier and easier for anyone to come up with information. And at the same time, because there's so much of it and because of how we're wired as humans, most information that is absorbed is forgotten. Point number 2, stories get remembered and they are more proprietary. When you tell a story of your personal experience, you own it. Nobody else can own that. And it's much more likely that you or anyone else will retain information when it is packaged in a story, because human beings, this is just our wiring as humans, to absorb and follow and retain story, not information. So do not try to fight this. Use it. Point number 3, There are very few truly ambitious people who can be satisfied with information alone. Most people need information packaged into some form of story that includes you when you're talking to you. You want to change your situation in your life, do not go looking for information. First of all, change the story in your head. Change the story in your head first, then put information in when the story is right and your mind is open. Then you get yourself the information. You have to be in a position to absorb it. There's an order of operations out here, and when you operate by inaccurate formulas, you get inaccurate outcomes. Work on your game, university.com, folks. You want to work with me directly so I can show you how to use this, first of all, for yourself. Get your mind in the right space. Then we can go to work on helping you understand what approach you need to take to get your career and your business where you want it to go, setting things up the way you want it set up strategically, putting a system in place so things work over and over again the way it's supposed to, like clockwork in a predictable pattern, and making sure that everything and everyone are being held accountable so that you can perform, produce consistently, and produce results. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre, all